The views expressed here are those of our hosts and guest speakers and do not represent the Uniformed Services University, the Department of War, or the Henry M. Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Medicine, Incorporated. Austin Von Leckman here, Mandatory Fun Day, and we are on set of the Check Your Six Pack podcast. This podcast is done in conjunction with the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress and Uniformed Services University. I'm joined by Steve today, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his story. Hey, Steve, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Wise. I'm an Army veteran. I was in the Army for 4 years, and I'm here because both of my parents struggled a lot with alcohol use disorder. They were both, and it basically ruined both of their lives. And so I'm here to talk about that.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about when maybe you realized as a child, hey, my parents might not have a healthy relationship with alcohol.
Man, you know, one of my earliest memories when I was a kid, I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and my dad was screaming at my mom, and he was beating the door down, and I just remember saying, like, Dad, please stop, and wow, really getting right into it. And I just remember being in the corner, huddled up, and crying, and just, I didn't really understand at the time what was going on, but I just knew that there was serious issues in the house. And, you know, it took me a lot longer, more years to understand it was the alcohol and the abuse and all that stuff. But yeah, I just feel like it's been a problem since day one, my earliest memories.
So you understood conceptually, you know, in a broad, maybe ambiguous way as a child, there's an issue here.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, my childhood, my earliest memories were just a lot of screaming and crying. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I remember seeing alcohol all over the house. I remember, you know, kids, they waddle around the house and they pick up, you know, things on the counter and they drink stuff from the table. And I just remember, like, anytime I ever drank something, a cup I found on the table, it was just always alcohol every time. They'd mix it with Diet Coke, orange juice, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah.
I mean, did you find that there were things that you couldn't trust with your parents? Did you find that there were dynamics in the relationship that were not normal to maybe the things that you observed with your friends?
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to me is the trust thing. And it connects to me with the idea of, like, consistency. And what's coming to mind is my dad would tell me how much he loved my mom and how much he loved us, but then I would see him scream and hit my mom and scream and hit us too, and it just didn't make sense. I would see him get so angry and have so much hate, and just, God, he was just, okay, so to get back to the question, the problem early on I had trying to understand was how you can love someone but also be so hateful and angry and hurt them, you know? So
bit of a dissonance.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me, and it took me a really long time, honestly, and I still don't even know if I have it fully figured out, but that's kind of been a central issue in my life. I spent a lot of time in therapy working through that, like, how do you love someone and hit them and beat them and hate them? You know?
Yeah, I think that's something that we begin to realize, especially as we become adults, that things are very rarely black and white. The world exists in shades of gray.
Yeah.
And so, like, coming to terms with the fact that there were aspects of your father that I'm sure you loved, that you liked, and even things that you want to emulate, but also there was this piece of him that was, you know, kind of ugly.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the emulating your parents thing, because I have 4 older brothers, and it's kind of a crapshoot with some people really emulated him a lot, and some people are repulsed by him.
Yeah.
You know, I have 2 brothers that just are almost like mini dads, you know, they're basically him. And I have other 2 brothers that are repulsed by him, hate everything about him, you know, they try to be the complete opposite of him. And I've always thought, you know, I'm the baby of the family. I feel like I'm kind of a mix, you know, right in the middle somewhere, you know, like I don't really emulate him. I don't really respect him as a role model, but I don't really hate him either. I just feel like he was a flawed human, like all of us, but to the extreme. And I think that extreme was really exacerbated by the alcohol use.
Sure. Yeah. How do you feel that the relationship that your parents had with alcohol shaped your relationship with your siblings? And tell us about your siblings first.
Okay, yeah, so I got 4 older brothers. They're all 6 years apart from each other. So 6 years between each of us. And so my oldest brother, well, I think the top 2 are like 4 years apart, but my oldest brother is 18 years older than me.
Sure.
So the day I'm born, he's already out of the house. And that was the theme growing up, is that as soon as you can get out of the house, you get out of the house, you never come back, you know?
And that had to do with the addiction, you think?
I think the age was a bigger thing. The age difference, you know, we just didn't really have much in common, but also just the complete fractured, shattered household from the alcohol use. I feel like I would go weeks without talking to my parents. Like either one of
Sure.
them, we wouldn't speak. The house would be silent, and then
You're in the house and you guys are not talking.
yeah, just
Wow.
walking past each other. No one's talking to each other.
Very
It's just
tense.
weird, very tense. You can feel it kind of under the surface, and then just every couple of weeks, just punctuated. The silence punctuated with just explosive anger,
Yeah.
rage, and
Some kind of event, some kind of traumatic event.
yeah. But it's always under the surface.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, so let's get back to how do you feel that your parents' alcohol use affected or shaped your relationship with your siblings?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was kind of always a thing that we didn't really talk about. I don't feel like we ever really addressed it openly. I mean, we all knew it was a thing, but we didn't really know how to address it. I wouldn't talk to my dad about his drinking for the first time until I was like 24.
Right.
And it was just always one of those weird open secrets. But I guess for my brothers, none of us were really close. It was actually, ironically, the death of both my parents, like at their funerals, a couple years apart, that brought us all together. And now we're closer than we've ever been. But until then, I feel like our parents kind of kept us separated. Not intentionally, but just the trauma.
Well, yeah, but their behavior, their actions drove a wedge between you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so now, what does your relationship with them look like?
It's pretty good. My brother, Brad,
Yeah.
we, game every now and then. Yeah, it's pretty good. There's one brother we're not as close with. It's a complicated situation, and it's probably a little bit outside the scope of the podcast. But basically, we're all about as close as
Sure.
we could.
Much better relationship, or much closer at least than
Yeah.
historically through your childhood. Do you like that? I mean, do you enjoy that?
Yeah, it's so strange because my brothers and I were all so different from each other.
Yeah.
It's like we didn't come from the same family.
Right.
And I guess in a sense we didn't, and it was the really interesting part, the funerals, which brought us together, but it was hearing my parents' friends and their siblings talk about them when they were younger and what they were like. And it's just crazy because I don't know those people at all.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with my brothers. Like my oldest brother was closest to my mom and least close to my dad, and then I'm closest to my dad, and so it's like a opposite scale, like where it kind of transferred over time to the point where my mom, I remember her beating me with a spoon in the kitchen. My dad would save me. So it just flip-flopped. But I heard stories about my parents that I just couldn't recognize. I had no idea. Like apparently my dad was a really cool, fun guy, party guy. He would show up and everyone loved him and he was nice.
When did you find out about that?
At the funeral.
At the funeral.
Yeah. At the
okay.
funeral.
So how did that's interesting. So your picture of your father, right, as his son was very different than what outside people got, basically the experience they got. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, it really blew me away, honestly, because I was the one that dealt with all of the estate stuff. And, I announced the funeral. I went on my dad's Facebook and announced for his friends to be there because I didn't really know him very well. But I was surprised at the overwhelming outreach that I had from people that knew my dad that were so sorry. He was such a great man. He was my best friend. He was a really nice guy, and it was just shocking because my situation growing up was just mostly horror.
I mean,
and just
it
rage
sounds like
and
the
pain.
undertone was fear. I mean, is that accurate to say?
What do you mean?
The undertone of your there was some level of fear. There was a low grade
between me and my
fear
dad.
most of the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was just really interesting because I got a new look at my parents, and unfortunately, it was too late. Right? They passed, but it was shocking to me at both of my parents' funerals to see these hear the stories of how they were perceived by the outside world versus the difference that their actual families were experiencing.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. And I think that's kind of what I'm here to share is that the effects of alcohol and how they can affect your children and your family, but in a way that you don't even maybe notice it. I wonder if my parents even really noticed. I wonder if they actually knew.
I mean, only they would have known that, and they're not here to ask now.
I know that's something I would actually like to get shared. I would like to encourage people to ask their parents now while they have the chance.
Yeah.
Because I really wish I could talk to them about this stuff. I have so many questions.
Yeah, because it is really common when somebody has extreme problem behavior of some kind. Everybody in the family, it's kind of we all know, but we don't talk about it, and that creates a really weird dynamic where it's tense. It's it can be contentious.
Right.
And yeah, it can especially when people are not ready to face that,
and they lash out in anger. It can create situations where fear is present.
It also breaks trust because it seems so obvious. Like there's this obvious, massive issue in all of our lives. Like it's like right in the middle, this giant elephant in the middle of the room, but nobody's talking about it. And as a kid, I don't think I ever really had expectations of myself to be the one to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to do, dude? So you got these parents here, and
you should have addressed the issue at 7. That's generally the age we expect.
But I gave you the business. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, I mean, it's this massive problem in the middle of the room, and like your parents are supposed to be the ones that walk you through that kind of stuff. But like their refusal to acknowledge it in the first place just makes, and especially since I was 12, I'm completely alone in the house.
Yeah.
And it's just like I have no idea what to do with this. I didn't have a phone. I couldn't reach out to my brothers, and they weren't coming back to like walk me through it. So it's just yeah.
Okay. So how did your parents' relationship with alcohol? How did their alcohol use impact your alcohol use? Can you tell me about like when you started drinking?
Yeah, so that goes back to what I was saying earlier about some people really emulate their parents, and some people go the opposite way and they're repulsed by it. And I'm somewhere in the middle as far as, but I think the brothers kind of developed the same pattern with alcohol. Like the ones that saw that as a role model and emulate him were also the ones that kind of edge towards problem drinking.
Sure.
I was always, when it comes to drinking specifically, I was more repulsed by the idea. I remember like my dad had this rage, this anger, and I never understood why, but I thought that alcohol was the problem. And so I was always very cautious of it from the beginning.
Sure.
But I've never really, I guess the fear or maybe the pain of seeing my dad and the pain that it's caused them growing up, it's always kind of kept me away from it.
Sure. But you drink, I mean.
Yeah. No, I like to drink, but I feel like I've never really had an issue with drinking too much or too often. Yeah. I don't think it's ever been a problem in my life personally.
Really? And so it's really interesting because, what you're saying about the people go one way or the other, they usually take it to one of the extremes,
right,
where they're like an exact copy, or they don't even touch alcohol. I mean, there's tons of celebrities that'll talk about that. They do not touch alcohol. They don't touch anything. I personally know people in my life. So like, was there any level of fear when you started drinking? Like, I could go down this route. I could go down this path.
I mean, I started drinking as most of us do as rebellious teenage kids, and I remember just, taking shots and stuff. I never really felt that compulsion to keep going, even though you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't. Some people don't have that feeling that they shouldn't. But,
Sure.
I mean, I have experienced the pull towards addiction in other parts of my life with like nicotine and other struggles. But I just personally with alcohol, I was never. I don't know. Maybe it is a fear thing. Once I get to a certain point, I'm kind of like, I don't want to.
Sure.
I don't want to get too far into this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you did 4 years in the Army.
Yeah.
And how would you personally, based on your observations, especially having been an infantryman, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe the cultural relationship the military has with alcohol?
It's rough. It's rough. In the infantry, it's rough. I joined when I was 18 and went to basic training in Fort Benning, and then I went straight to Germany. That's where my first duty station was. And when you send a couple of 18-year-old kids to Germany and they're just out of basic training, they got 3-4 months of pay saved up.
Yeah.
They go crazy. They go hard.
Yeah.
The first 4-day weekend, people are blowing thousands of dollars. It's just nonstop drinking and partying. And we also found out as soon as I got to Germany, we were going to Afghanistan. So it also had this extra added pressure of like, we don't know what's going to happen. So the drinking culture that I experienced might have been a little more extreme than the average, but it was definitely, it was intense. It was extreme. People are missing PT. Like in the morning, they're hungover. I remember 5-mile runs, people are throwing up. Like at least every Monday morning run, someone's throwing up.
Sure.
Like the alcohol abuse was insane, especially in Germany. It was everywhere.
And then did the leadership do anything in response to this? Like what was their behavior surrounding alcohol? What did they tell you guys?
We had some pretty rough Friday safety briefs. They were, like 30-minute long safety briefs about don't go here, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that, But I don't think they ever really did anything to really stop it. I don't know if they could.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, they could have talked to us more about it, but I do feel like we got lectured to very often, very much.
Right.
You know.
So they were telling you, hey, like, this is a problem. You guys need to stop. But past that, there really wasn't much action taken.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you went to Afghanistan. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I got Germany. I was there for like a couple days. They said you're going to Afghanistan. The unit that my first duty station was already downrange when I got there, so they had been there for like 6-7 months maybe, and so it's kind of up in the air whether I would go or not because it's kind of towards the back end.
Sure.
But they told us we're going. So I only had like 3 months. I caught the back end of the deployment to Kabul. It was a training mission. It was very tame.
Right. Yeah. So when you were, I want to go back to Germany. So are you a person that you would say succumbs to peer pressure, or are you pretty firm in how you feel and what you do?
I would say I definitely gave into peer pressure when I was younger. But I've got a lot of experience with peer pressure. So now I feel like I've trained and practiced enough to not be so much as an adult. But yeah, I was definitely peer pressured a lot by kids.
Can you elaborate on that specifically with, your time in Germany?
Oh, the peer pressure in Germany. I think, well, honestly, yeah, I guess. So there is a cultural kind of like, hey, we're all going to go out after, have some drinks. And it's kind of like, I mean, honestly, the barracks would be empty. Like everybody goes, staying back wasn't really an option, I guess, So I guess there is a little bit of peer pressure in that sense where it's like, if you want to, be a part of the group, then you kind of have to partake in this kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then, you guys went from Germany, you went to Afghanistan. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Afghanistan, it was like a training mission for the Afghan National Army. So we weren't really doing patrols or anything like that. It was more just, training the Afghan National Army.
Okay. And then you came back from that. What'd you do then?
It's actually funny. This rarely happens in the Army, but they shut that unit down. So the 170th Infantry Brigade.
Oh, really?
Yeah, doesn't exist anymore.
They just canned it?
Yeah, just canned the whole unit. So the last like 6 months of me being in Germany was just packing up everything and then got shipped off to Fort Hood.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So that was your foray at Fort Hood.
Yeah.
All right. And so then tell us about Fort Hood, because that's where we met, obviously.
Yeah.
So let's get the audience up to speed.
Well, in Germany it was light infantry, so there's no vehicles, a lot of walking, rucking. And then in Fort Hood it's mechanized, so we had Bradleys and stuff. So that was the biggest difference for me personally, like career-wise. I was a Bradley driver, so everything revolves around the vehicles.
Yeah.
And
do you want to show the audience your death before dismount tattoo?
No. It's like my old chest, basically.
Steve does not have any tattoos.
No. Yeah, so I mean, career-wise, I didn't like the infantry. I didn't like what I was doing. I wasn't a big fan of it.
Why?
I just didn't. I mean, well, the idea of it is, it's fun to, shoot, sell, kick indoors. That's fun. But the culture, I was not at all a good cultural fit. I just did not fit into the hyper masculine alpha bro, like, everything is what's your PT score, how many people you're sleeping with. Like, there's this hyper masculine culture, which I think maybe ties in to alcohol's use. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
But
like alcohol is seen as a way to, I don't know.
Yeah, but
prove yourself.
Yeah, it's a very strong culture. It's very, very strong. And if you're not 100% in, then you're basically out.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be into that culture, and so I kind of just didn't really have many friends.
Sure.
And I just, the career was who I was when I was 18 years old after growing up in a rural area and, being programmed with this patriotic, I do have a lot of respect for the military, obviously. And I do really appreciate what they do. But the difference between me being 18 when I joined and, 23 when I got out, I had changed so much. And I credit my time in Germany and my time in Afghanistan and, these diverse experiences that I had with diverse groups of people to just, I mean, I guess in the beginning, the infantry felt like might have been a good fit. And then by the end of it, I just said, I can't, I got to get out, I got to do something different.
So how did you exit the infantry, I guess? What did that look like?
I signed up for a 5-year contract, but 4 years in, I messed my back up.
Yeah.
And so I med-boarded out towards the end. So I basically almost did 5.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, I definitely want to talk about the story about how you got lifeguard detail for sure. So I need you to tell that story.
Yeah. So as you know, in Fort Hood and I guess a lot of Army bases, there's this urban myth that you can get this job called lifeguard detail.
Lifeguard
right?
detail.
And so everyone that's in the military knows that you get PT every morning. You got to get up, you got to dress this way, you got to go here and do this job, and it's very structured and routine. But there's this lifeguard detail that you can get where you just show up to work in flip-flops and
shorts,
shirt, just shorts, and you hang out on the water, like it's a pool or the beach, the lake, and you just have a good time. There's no PT, there's nothing like that. You work a couple days a week. It's just it's like a dream. It's like a dream for anyone in the military.
Yeah.
Right? But you don't ever really know anyone that's done it.
Yep.
You just know someone that heard about someone that knows someone that done it.
Yeah.
And so I think it was around March in Texas when they start to open up the lifeguard details. But word on the street was they're going to start pulling people for lifeguard detail.
Sure.
And then one Monday morning, we're at the motor pool. Sergeant Major comes out, calls everybody around him, big crowd, and I got this feeling like, oh man, this is it, And so I walk up to the very front of the crowd, and I'm standing right in front of Sergeant Major, like me to you away, and he's screaming at everybody, "Who here knows how to swim?" And I go, "I do, Sergeant Major." Like I screamed it right in his face, and he goes, "You're gonna be a lifeguard." And I was like, yeah, I was so excited. And then he gave us the briefing on it, and then by the end of the brief, my platoon sergeant came up to me and said, "You're not gonna be a lifeguard. I don't care what happens. I'm gonna make sure that you're not a lifeguard," because he wanted me to be his gunner and he wanted to promote me, And so we walked back, and the sergeant major, I guess, had told the first sergeants who he was picking. And so my platoon sergeant and my first sergeant called me into his office and said, "I want you to think about what this is going to do to your career." And I said, "I already thought about it. It's good. I want to be a lifeguard." And he said, "If you take this, you will never make sergeant in my company. I will never promote you."
So what's funny about that is he said, "I want you to think about what this is going to do to your career." But in reality, it's what he chose to do to your career. So it's like, it wasn't actually what you did to your career. You know what I mean? There's nothing inherently wrong with being on a detail.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just like another.
Yeah.
We probably could do a whole nother podcast on the cultural toxicity of the United States Army Infantry.
I would love to do that, by the way.
Don't come for me. I grapple. All right. Please continue, Steve.
Yeah, and so they pulled me into the office and they basically threatened me. It's like, it's lifeguard detail or on a career in the Army, and I said, "I'll take lifeguard any day of the week. Like I'm fine with it. I'm 100% fine with it." And I'm like, all right. And so that was it. I became a lifeguard, and that's where I met you. And we hit it off immediately. You know?
You remember they took down the slide actually at Blora. There's no more water slide. It's sad, because what Steve and I would do is we would send people down the water slide, and it had to be 100 feet, like, of this winding, gigantic, like, tube slide. Like you remember the extreme sports movies in the 90s when people would be like skateboarding down? Like, it looked like one of those. And we would hide behind the corners and we would scare the daylights out of people, basically. And it didn't matter, man, woman, or child. You were getting scared on the Blora water slide. And I'll never forget, one lady was like, she knew it was coming, and she was like, don't do it. I heard her just bleeding, and then I went, boom, and she screamed. It was great. It was a great time. I don't know why anybody didn't stop us, because that was not part of the job description, but I think we made it fun.
Yeah,
I think
probably why they don't have slides anymore.
That's why they got rid of the slide. People probably needed counseling after being scared on the slide too many times. And we call all the kids Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Every kid was named Lincoln.
You ask them what their name is, doesn't matter what they say. You say Lincoln, and they go, "No, it's not that.
It's Samantha. Lincoln? Oh, God. Okay, so, lifeguard detail ended, right? And then you went on. What'd you do after that?
Well, first, before we move on, I just want to say that was the best time of my life, honestly. I loved that. I loved everything about it. It was the best. And that's why I got to meet you.
For sure, worth giving up the infantry for.
Oh, absolutely. I highly recommend it. Any infantryman out there, if you get it, take it.
There's going to be at least 3 people that watch this and have an aneurysm because of what you are saying right now. Okay, so after lifeguard detail was over, what'd you do?
And then I got orders to go to Fort Campbell.
Okay.
Yeah, which is actually really interesting because my experience, going to Germany and, for your mission in Afghanistan to be training the National Army instead of being like doing actual patrols and missions and stuff, you can tell that they're not like the most serious unit,
Sure.
And then they got shut down. And then we go to Fort Hood and, we were training. I didn't have any kind of deployment with them or anything. But it was just the vibe felt very much not serious, But then going to Fort Campbell in the 101st Airborne Division, like it was very,
that's
very
premier
serious.
infantry.
Oh, yeah, it's very serious. And it's interesting because while pretty much all the lower enlisted had CIBs, like combat infantry batteries,
Yeah.
they had deployed, they had been in this, been in it, they had been in it. They were way more chill, way less alpha, bro, way less toxic.
Yeah, they didn't feel like they had something to prove.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Going from, the one culture where nobody has CIBs, no one's done anything, but they act like they're about it, like they would, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like being 5 minutes late, back from Taco Bell. So that's an inside joke.
We have to explain that story
Yeah, I
now.
gotta explain it.
Okay, so and this was my first experience with your dealing with conflict, your conflict resolution skills, if you could call it that back then.
Right.
So Steve and I went to go get Taco Bell for the group of lifeguards. Okay, and Blora is like a half hour from civilization. Like it's so far from anything, and so it took us a long time. So the E7, that was the NCOIC at the time, called me yelling, and Steve could hear it. Like I didn't have it on speakerphone; he could just hear it over the phone. He's yelling at me, and he's like, "You guys need to get back right now. Where are you guys?" And Steve took the phone out of my hand and said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Our teleporter's broken, and it's gonna take a second to get back after we get you and everybody else food." And then he hung up, and I thought I was gonna die.
Well, I just felt like we're paying for everybody's food, We're going out of our way to
No,
help
they
you
were
guys.
being rude.
Yeah.
You were fully within your right, but seeing a E4 specialist talk to an E7 senior NCO, and then we got back, and we were like, they put some arbitrary number on it. They were like, "You guys are 7 minutes late. 7 minutes is a long time in a firefight," and so 7 minutes is a long time in a firefight has been an inside joke ever since.
Right.
And that's a good one.
But it's just funny because the guy that told me that had never been in a firefight, right? So it's like, how does he know? I don't know.
I mean, how does he know about the passage of time in a firefight, having never been in
Yeah,
a firefight?
exactly.
It's interesting. All right, tell us more about Fort Campbell.
Yeah, but so I guess it speaks to the difference in culture. If they have something to prove, then you bring on that hyper masculine, toxic energy. But once you've proved it, then you don't need that anymore. And so it's actually way more serious in the sense of like they take their job very serious, very professional, and they do it really well. But they're not they're way more chill and relaxed about how everything else happens.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what was the culture surrounding alcohol at Campbell? Was it different?
Honestly, I don't know if I can really speak too much to that. I was basically going through the med board process there.
Sure.
And so I was only there for like 6 months.
So you didn't have time to build some of those like personal
Yeah.
relationships with a lot of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you did like the medical retirement process out of Fort Campbell, and then after that, where did you go?
And then I got out and I went back home to Maryland. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so my plan was to go to school. At the time, I wanted to be a therapist. So I was going to school studying psychology. And I think I'd been home for about a month or two. And that's when I got the call from my dad. He called me one night and I just knew immediately, like, oh, my mom's dead. Like,
Yeah.
I just knew. Like, he never calls me. He barely calls me at all. But when he's going to call me and I'm living 20 minutes away and it's like past 9 p.m., I just knew. And I remember answering the phone and he's just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He's like in this weird trance. And he's like, I don't know. She's dead. She's dead. I don't know what to do. And I said, okay, I'll call 911. I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah.
Just stay calm. So I call 911. I'm driving to the house and I get there. My dad is walking around with his hands up in the air. Like that clip of Anchorman. He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like
Yeah.
he was literally like in this trance. Like his arms are up in the air. He's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He was in shock. And I'm like, okay, Dad's gonna be all right. I go up to check on Mom. She's very clearly dead. And so it just became about managing the situation. But I'll never forget like the way that it destroyed my dad. Like the weeks after my mom passing, and she passed away from cirrhosis of the liver. So it's directly from alcohol. But the way that he had just completely spiraled out of control those weeks afterwards, he'd wake up, he had night terrors. He would wake up in the middle of his sleep. He was screaming in his sleep.
Yeah.
Like begging for her, like he loved her so much and he misses her so much. And it was just really strange for me as a kid that grew up watching what he did to her, hitting her all the time, screaming at her. I remember kicking doors down like off the hinges so he could hit her, and then now he's just a complete mess without her. And it was so shocking to me. I couldn't understand like how, again, like back to the original question, like how can you love someone while you're also beating them and saying you hate them.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
What did the relationship, did that dynamic, that effectively violent dynamic between your parents continue after you left the house? Did anything change in the time between when you left and your mother passed?
No. So my dad had kind of cooled off by the time I was like 15, I think.
Okay.
I don't think he ever really had like a violent rage anymore. He was still drinking himself to death, but he wasn't like angry or, wasn't like hitting my mom or anything. But the damage was done. My mom could never forgive him for what he did. And,
there's resentment.
Yeah, and even from the time I was like probably like 8 or 9, my mom was just, she had gotten a DUI. She had lost her license. So she was basically just relegated to her room, and she would just smoke cigarettes all day.
Wow.
And she would just cry all day and drink all day. She would drink 2 liter of vodka like every day. And so it was just, I would wake up, at least once a week, I would wake up in the middle of the night to my mom screaming into her pillow, like begging God to kill her, like truly, like she's miserable, she's crying and screaming. And I just saw, like, that was one of the big things I saw, like how alcohol has just ravaged the family. It just destroyed it.
Yeah.
Getting off track though. So she got a DUI, lost her job, and I remember she had to go for these testings, I guess once a week or twice a week. I can't remember what it was, but she made me pee in a cup. I didn't know why. I was 8 years old. But she said, just pee in this cup. And I was like, why, Mom? Just pee in the cup. I need you, And
It's a canon event. That's good. Builds character.
Yeah, so
that's like family bonding in a way. I mean,
kind of. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, I guess it was so she could pass whatever drug test. But,
sure.
Getting off track here. What was the original question?
The relationship between your mom and your dad. How did that change?
Oh, right. Yeah. So even though my dad had kind of chilled out, he was kind of relaxed. At least not violent. My mom could just never forgive him for it. I mean, she was just a husk of a human being. It sounds horrible to say, but I don't know how else to say it. Like truly just given up on life and wanted to die. She begged for God to kill her, like literally.
When do you remember? What's the earliest time you remember hearing her begging to die?
Probably. God, I mean, it's all so like my whole life. It's kind of like weaved in and out.
Yeah.
Probably 6, 7.
Yeah, and so I have to believe that this has impacted you. Like it's shaped, the way that you make decisions. I mean, the way that you view relationships, your own relation. Like, you know what I mean? How has this impacted you in your day-to-day life as an adult now?
Jeez, it's funny. That's been like the central theme of my life. That's why I've been so interested in psychology and becoming a therapist, and I'm just so fascinated with this whole situation and how people get to that point.
Right.
Because especially I learned from the funerals, my parents weren't like that when they were young.
Yeah.
They weren't like that when they were in high school. Like they became that way over time, not overnight, but slowly, painfully, that long, slow descent down into just devastation.
Yeah.
And so I've always been like really interested in how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's affected me a lot in my relationships.
Yeah.
I think I internalized my mom's pain, her screaming and crying into her pillow every night, because she hated my dad for doing what he did to her.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I wish someone would treat my mom better. I think I internalized this kind of like savior complex around helping people, helping women specifically in relationships that have been mistreated.
Sure. And so would you say that draws you to maybe like chaotic romantic partners?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Had a lot of the chaos in romantic relationships, and there's been definitely a similar pattern over time. Trying to help
you want to. It sounds like in a way you're trying to give to people what your dad didn't give to your mom.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. That's really, it's admirable for sure.
Yeah, a little misguided though. And so as I got older, I've like worked through like the whole thing, like, like you were saying in the beginning of the podcast, the gray area, life's not black and white, right? So my mom was guilty of doing certain things too, which is like weird. If you see someone in that state, like it's hard to like give them blame or assign accountability, but like
if you see a victim,
right,
or who you perceive as a victim,
right,
it's hard to be like, they did things wrong too.
Yeah, and so the when you look at the gray in life, you see this massive picture where there's just so much that goes into it. This is like a 30, 40-year relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Or I don't think they made
There's
40.
so much
Right.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 30 years of, little things, little fights, little problems, little stuff building up, alcoholism, DUIs, losing jobs. My dad was a construction worker, so there's getting laid off. And then obviously in the wintertime, usually gets laid off. That's when his drinking was always the worst. And, he got cancer. There's just all these different things that kind of. So I guess the point is the gray area. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, you effectively had to manage and deal with the death of your mother. It sounds like without your father. I mean, did he help? Or was he kind of
No.
just a mess?
yeah, no, he couldn't. He could. Yeah, it was a complete.
He's
mess.
non-functional.
Yeah, his drinking really went off the deep end at that point. He had been kind of managing at that point. He was kind of mixing, doing a little bit of weed too, to kind of like mellow him out. But at that point, he just went straight into hard liquor, and he was a mess. He actually showed up to my mom's funeral with a giant black eye because he never knew why. We don't know what happened. I guess he just got blackout drunk and he fell somewhere and hit his face
Wow.
on something. But it was just a real, like, I'll never forget standing up, and addressing the crowd at the funeral and seeing my dad in the front seat, and he's just crying, and his eye, like his whole face was really black and bruised.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know how this guy's gonna take care of himself. And my brother actually had to stop what he was doing and move in to like kind of
Really?
help him take care of himself. Yeah, 'cause he
Which
didn't
brother
have-
was that?
Michael.
Michael.
My third middle between me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he moved in and like showed him how to do laundry and cook food for himself and all that kind of stuff.
That's pretty cool that he had that. Not
Yeah.
not everybody has that family support system. What did you do when you saw your father's reaction to the passing of your mother? Like, did you talk to a therapist? Like, what did you do to reconcile these two very viscerally different like situations?
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent for therapy. I recommend it to everyone, especially if you're in the military or a veteran. Like, you get it for free. I mean, it's incredible. I've been seeing therapists off and on through different parts of my life since I was 22, I think.
Yeah.
So I've always been really interested in the whole. I'm a big believer, and I recommend it. Encourage everyone to do it.
Sure.
But yeah, like I've had these central problems that I've worked through, I struggled with, and one of them was how my dad could be so in love with someone at the same time while hating them
Yeah.
and hitting them.
I can remember times in our friendship when this kind of stuff, obviously not to that extreme or that, I don't know, egregious happened, but like, there was a time when I was supposed to pick you up at a specific time for lifeguard detail. And, you told me something to the effect, and I'm going to say it much more bluntly than you did at the time, but you were like, hey, we're friends and friends stick to their word. Like, you were late. Like, we need to not be late. Now we're at work late. Things look bad. 7 minutes is a long time in a firefight. but that situation really did happen. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's interesting because, I've seen firsthand how that I think that you have maybe there's a little contentious relationship with that, like weird paradox between, you love somebody and then you treat them badly. You know what I mean? From your parents, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a funny example. I do have like kind of a, I don't know if you'd call it a complex around or just a thing about being true to your word and being honest.
Yeah.
And like sticking and saying what you mean. And
What about justice?
justice? Yeah, I think a strong sense of justice and what's right and wrong. And
Sure.
I kind of might impose that on other people. It's definitely affected relationships in that sense.
Mhm.
And I think I guess I think it's a way to gauge trustworthiness. And I guess ultimately what I've learned from my childhood is that I don't ever want to be in any kind of situation my parents were in.
So your mother passed and you had to kind of deal with that. But there was a gap in time between when your mother passed and, when your father passed. Can you tell us about what that looked like?
Yeah, it was a couple years. My dad eventually found a way to take care of himself, and he actually reconnected with a girl he used to date in high school. And so, they kind of started dating, and that was kind of cool. It was kind of cool to see him kind of have a second chance at it.
Sure.
I think for all the wrong that my dad did, after the years of him like making up for it, my mom still was never able to forgive him.
Yeah.
You know, so it was cool to kind of see him be able to start fresh with a new person and kind of be a sweet, nice guy and be like, loving and kind to her. So I was starting to see this new version of my dad that I'd never seen before, and it was really cool. It was really exciting because I felt like he was on his redemption arc. I felt
Sure.
like he was gonna start opening up to his kids, and my brother would bring my dad's grandkid to him, and he would like drive him around on the tractor and stuff. So I feel like he was getting there, like he was really coming around. But unfortunately, it was it's too late.
Yeah.
Like his liver's already done and everything. But I did get some interesting insight into his perspective on his drinking and basically our upbringing from his new girlfriend. And that was really interesting because essentially the cliff notes are he doesn't feel like he did. He feel like he gave us the bare minimum.
Yeah.
He gave us, no, he wouldn't say bare minimum. We say bare minimum. He said he basically believed that he, fed us, he watered us, he gave us clothes, he was
A house.
Yeah, he put a roof over our head. Like that was all he felt like he had to do. So all the other stuff was kind of just like not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like once a month going downstairs and stepping on a piece of broken glass because he dropped it. He was so drunk one night trying to make a drink. Like beating my mom and like all that stuff doesn't really matter as much as keeping a roof over your head.
Sure.
And so that was kind of like his perspective on it.
He felt he met his obligations as a father.
Yeah, and then everything else doesn't really matter so much, which is a really interesting perspective. And I feel like it's not that uncommon. And I just feel like if you have that kind of perspective, you should maybe take a second to sit down with that and think about it for a little bit, because I would have rather had not nearly as the clothes or the big house or the whatever.
Sure.
If I could have just had a loving parent or a nice, stable, safe environment at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just feel like it maybe stemmed from a mismatch in priorities.
Sure.
And then maybe the alcohol exacerbated all this other stuff. But like I didn't really see much remorse from him at least from his girlfriend's perspective. I didn't really get it directly from him. This is my dad's girlfriend's interpretation of his and our situation. So I don't know. And again, like I never got the chance to talk to him about it. So I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Why didn't you ever talk to him directly about it?
I tried. I definitely tried. And I would kind of feel it out like once a year since I was like 22 maybe. I would try to sit down and communicate with him through the only way he knew how, crack it open a brew. So I tried to sit down and talk with him, he's grilling, and I could never get anything out of him. He was just like I don't know what it was.
What did you
had this
sense
wall
out
up.
of it? Like embarrassment, shame, like what? I mean, what'd you get out of it?
That's a good question. I think.
What do you think the barrier was?
I feel like I got so little from my dad that I wouldn't even be able to guess.
Really?
I think. Like I remember asking about like what he thought about like religion and what happens after you pass, and he's like, I don't know, like that was his response to a lot of that kind of stuff.
Really?
And I was like, what do you feel like, mom, like trying to get over that kind of stuff? She's like, I don't know what her problem was, like he was always just brush it away. Real quick.
Kind of
He never-
dismissive.
Yeah, very dismissive about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had to reconcile that for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, could you reword that? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, like I mean, so you're never gonna have those answers that you were looking for that you very clearly attempted to get.
Oh yeah, it's weird, but I kind of feel like I never really thought I would get those answers.
Really?
So I didn't really expect them, and I guess the only thing I take away from that is really trying to encourage people to talk to the parents about stuff.
Sure.
And not just the parents. Like communication is huge, and in a family, like that's the big thing. You need to be able to communicate. We talked about that earlier, but the elephant in the room thing, like, and the nature of alcohol disorder, it feels like, is to not really address it or dismiss it or hide it or just kind of minimize it. All those things prevent you from actually facing it and solving it.
Well, I mean, the whole anytime somebody has kind of problem behavior with like literally anything, but alcohol is the most prevalent one in our society, right? A lot of times it's to hide from something or cope with something or to not address something. So it's not surprising, What did your dad's relationship with alcohol look like? It sounds like he spiraled down pretty hard. I mean, did it ever peter off? What did it look like up until he passed?
Yeah, so right after my mom died, he spiraled off real bad, and then it was a rough few months, maybe 3 or 4 months, and then he kind of started to climb out of it, and he started dating his girlfriend, and they started smoking more than drinking, so he was pretty mellowed out.
Really?
And yeah, it wasn't too bad. Unfortunately, a couple of years later, he died. He had from heart complications from alcohol abuse. That was the official death certificate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shoot. And so what? I mean, were you in? It was in Maryland, right?
Yeah, and that was also another much more traumatic experience actually, because I was at home visiting at that point in time, and I just remember waking up in the middle of the night, his girlfriend screaming and calling for me, and I go in there and she's like, he's not breathing, and so it's like a much more active scene, right? And so I'm evaluating him, doing the the army training of his CPR,
Yeah.
and evaluating, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's he's done. But I called 911, and they're like, is he breathing? They kind of give you a checklist, and I'm like, no, he's done. They're like, I'm gonna need you to give him CPR until the ambulance gets there. And I was like, guys, I really don't think it's we're not going anywhere with this. Like, he's done. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, we just need you to try. I was like, okay, so I pull him off the bed, and I'm giving him CPR, and I think the army teaches you, if you want to break a rib, you know what I mean? You want to
Yeah.
feel it snap. And so I remember thinking that, like, okay. And I went 1, 2, and thunk. I mean, it was way easier than I thought it would be.
Really?
It was like a carrot, just thunk. Just broke the rib. I was like, okay, this is good CPR. But it felt like an eternity of giving him CPR. But I have no idea how long it was, maybe 5 minutes.
Sure.
I don't know. But I remember just staring into my dad's face. His one eye cocked open, and he's just, it's clearly done. But I remember staring into his face for what felt like forever, and just seeing a man that would never have the opportunity to make up for the mistakes that he'd made. That was it. You know what I mean? Like, he
Yeah.
can never go back. He can never change anything. That's it.
It's over.
Yeah. And so that was a really shocking thing for me, because it really made me reevaluate what I was doing with my life.
Yeah. Throughout all of these stories that you've told, it sounds like when traumatic things happen to you, your response is to do self-reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's funny. I think I like to say that overall, I'm grateful for the experience that I had, because my parents were so hands-off, and I guess you could say they were so absorbed in their own stuff. They never gave me any guidance or direction. So it was always up to me to figure out who I'm going to be, what I'm going to do, what are my values, and what are my morals. And so I've always kind of had to rely on myself to do that, which I think is kind of a blessing. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for that, because I haven't had the I think a lot of people get given direction from their parents, and they might not necessarily fit them well, but
Yeah.
they follow it because they feel like they should. Or
Sure.
I never really had that. So, but both my parents dying were probably the most impactful moments of my life, and they, like you said, it gave me a lot of self-reflection afterwards, and they made me kind of change what I was doing. My mom dying really solidified, I want to be a therapist. I want to prevent people from becoming like this.
Sure.
I don't want this to happen to other people. But my dad dying was oh, this is a guy that can never go back. He can never change. He can never do what he should have done, but he never could do what he
Never get a
wanted
second
to
chance.
do. Yeah. And so that's why I ultimately switched to engineering, because I wanted to focus on my actual passions and interests instead of just,
Wow, that's really interesting. So your mom was the catalyst for wanting to pursue psychology, but your father passing was the catalyst which made you realize, oh, you don't get a second chance to do this over.
Right.
I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And so your academic career, I mean, because you were in and out of school, as I understand, after you got out of the Army. I mean, what did that look like?
Yeah, I worked a lot of odd jobs. I was going to school at first, and my mom died, and I had to deal with all of that, surrounding stuff. But I was always working. I worked on farms. I was like a ranch hand. I worked at construction, home remodeling.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite job was coaching kids. I was an athletic trainer for kids, teaching them basic, athletic movements, but also
Sure.
lacrosse and soccer, stuff like that. But at first it was therapy, and then it was engineering. But more importantly, from my dad passing, it was not just that I should do engineering, but it was more the idea that I should really follow my own interests and passions, because life is really short. And it's a cliche,
Yeah.
life's short. But after seeing my dad, staring at him for felt like an eternity, and seeing oh, this is it. I knew that there would never be another time. So it's not
Yeah.
just, it's engineering, it's content creation, it's, you know, doing podcasts, like all this kind of stuff is like really the lessons I've learned from it.
Sure. And why do you think, like, I mean, because you could probably draw a similar conclusion for seeing your mom pass. Why do you think it was your dad passing that did that for you?
That's a really good question. I think, you know, there was the age difference, you know, being just out of the Army and not really knowing. But like, I think as I got older, I kind of interpreted things differently. you
Sure.
know? But when I was younger, I remember thinking like, not just for my mom, like, but for me, like I wanted to help other people through therapy, but also wanted to help myself, like trying to understand better, like where did she go wrong and how
Yeah.
do I not go wrong, you know?
Oh, I see.
And so I feel like over the years, I kind of got a really strong hold of like that situation.
Sure.
And then after my dad dying, it's like, okay, like I understand, like I do want to help people. I do want to do things, but not like so much focused on
Yeah.
the
So would you
psychological
say maybe because of your mom's relationship with alcohol, you wanted to understand the process, and then you felt like you understood the process enough? So you're seeing your dad pass, saying you don't get a second chance. Okay, now I have what I needed out of this. Maybe you were pursuing the psychology route because you were trying to like learn something, discover something for
Yeah.
you personally. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. And then seeing your dad pass, you don't get a second chance, and so then you decided to, I mean, focus on yourself, quite frankly,
Right.
you know. And after that, like, you know, what your pathway after the Army, I mean, it was kind of all over the place, right? You
Oh,
did
yeah.
school and then some kind of job, school. Sometimes you did them together,
Yeah.
right? You changed majors a couple times.
Yeah.
But after your dad passed, you pretty quickly kind of, I don't want to say figured it out, because I don't think there's one way to walk through life.
Right.
And I think that phrase, there's a negative connotation with it, but you kind of locked in. I
Yeah.
mean, and you honed in on one thing, and you have since graduated, right?
Right. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, finally, you know, after going to school for 20 years, I finally graduated with an engineering degree, mechanical engineering from San Jose State, and I also got an associate in psychology before that.
And that's a good school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
it's
good
pretty
engineering
yeah.
school.
It's all right.
Mechanical engineering is not an easy program.
No.
So despite what you know, I mean, can you tell us about that? Because we all know engineering, STEM degrees in general are very challenging. I got an exercise science degree. You know what I mean? Like, STEM degrees are hard. That's heavy coursework. I mean, that's a lot of math. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting as someone that, you know, didn't really have a role model growing up. I didn't have people encouraging me to do stuff. I never thought that I could do it. I always
Yeah.
felt like I was too dumb, or I wasn't, you know, disciplined enough or anything like that. I always had a lot of excuses, like common things that people think why they can't do it.
Yeah.
And I think it did scare me. I was really scared to try it. But you know, I think that my dad passing and like that really kind of fueled me to
Sure.
give it a shot. And by committing to doing that, like I would recommend it to anyone that's interested, and I do encourage a lot of people to do it that I meet.
Yeah.
Because it is challenging, but it's never like out of your reach. They walk you through it, they teach you how to do it. But like the fulfillment you get from working and solving hard problems, like
Mhm.
it's
Huge sense of accomplishment.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, so given what you've seen through your childhood, you've witnessed the passing of two parents. You had to deal with the passing of two parents because you dealt with the passing of your father as well. You dealt with his estate. I mean, what would you say to the audience, right? You know, about their relationship with alcohol, or the relationship that they may have, like that they see with a loved one in alcohol? Like, what is there advice you would give them? Is there guidance you would give them? Is there just something that you want to say?
Yeah, I think from what I've learned in psychology and therapy, like in relationships, communication is the most important thing. Like honest communication.
Yeah.
And for you to communicate anything honestly with anyone else, you need to first be honest with yourself. I know it sounds cheesy and cliche.
No,
but
no.
You can't communicate an idea to someone if you don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah.
So being really honest with yourself, I feel like is the solution, and being honest with yourself and communicating that is the solution to every relationship issue.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the engineering mindset of like breaking the problem down into like, you know, the most
Yeah.
logical steps. But I think what gets lost a lot is, I think the reason that the alcohol abuse gets lost a lot is because it's swept under the rug or minimized or dismissed,
Yeah.
or like, oh, I can stop whenever I want, or it's not that big of a deal, or I'm still meeting my obligations, even if it's barely. Like, it's so I guess the overall recommendation would be to, like, if you're someone that is struggling, or someone that is struggling, is to like dive in and really communicate it, really work through it, and especially if you're military or a veteran, like get in with a therapist and talk to them about it, because like that's the best way to work through it.
Sure. So it's funny that you are focused on the communication piece when you communicated earlier to me that your dad was, I mean, maybe there was shame, maybe there was embarrassment, maybe there was fear of rejection. Who knows what was going through his mind, but he was not good at communicating. Maybe it wasn't even that he was not open to it. Maybe it's just that he didn't have the tools, or whatever it was, right? So it's funny for you to say that communication's so big. Do you feel that you still got value out of that attempted communication with your dad, even though you didn't really get what you were looking for out of it?
Yeah, definitely. I can only say I tried, right?
Yeah.
And so I would recommend to anyone.
You left everything on the table.
Yeah. I'd recommend everyone try, just at the very least, so you can say you tried. Like, I would be pretty upset if I had never tried to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
But I feel like communication is specifically important for when there's a family dynamic and you have kids, and like you might think it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But it is a big deal, and you need to be the one that's getting ahead of it and communicating that and describing what's happening to your kids, so they don't have to go through the trouble of trying to make sense of it themselves.
Right.
Because I had such a hard time trying to understand why those family was the way that it was. And, it took me 20 years to figure it out.
Do you feel that maybe there was, did you have resentment at one point for this stuff?
For like alcohol in general, or like
just the way like any situation you found yourself in that pertained to alcohol and alcohol abuse and the people that were quite frankly supposed to take care of you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I definitely resented my dad for a while, because all I saw was like the outward obvious aggression and hitting towards my mom, and my mom broken. So I blamed my dad a lot for a while. But in my early 20s, I kind of came around to the idea, like, it's great, like we talked about. Drinking, I don't think is really the enemy. I don't think alcohol itself is the problem.
Yeah.
I think there is a way that you can healthily use it, and there's a way that you can be responsible. But and that's kind of the gray area of this problem. The disorder is that it's not usually snap your fingers or flip a switch and it's a problem now. It's like a spectrum. You know what I mean? So and you can be. We are all on the spectrum somewhere of the disorder. But being able to recognize that and deal with it before it gets too much worse.
Right. Yeah. Before it becomes a problem, before it is affecting the people that you love. Yeah, for sure. We've covered a lot. We've covered a lot of really heavy stuff up to this point. We talked about your childhood. We talked about how your childhood has affected your adulthood, and specifically the relationship your parents had, the most integral people you had growing up, their relationship with alcohol. It's affected every facet of your life, right? And you had every reason to have it as a roadblock. But despite the fact that you went through things that most people will never go through, you've accomplished things that most people never will. And that's pretty incredible. I want you to tell the audience in your own words, how this impacted you, and just pass on literally anything. It could be guidance, mentorship, just a statement, anything that you want to say directly to the audience about how this impacted you and, maybe what they should do.
Yeah, I think if you're someone that's, think you might have a problem with this, you might just be going out 3 or 4 nights a week and, drinking with your friends. It's not a problem. It's not affecting anyone else. It only affects me. I would really encourage you to think about, I want you to know that it actually is affecting everyone around you. It affected me in ways that my parents could have never imagined. My dad may or may not remember beating my mom's door down to beat her, but he definitely has no idea that I was crying in the corner and trying to understand, what is a healthy relationship? What is safety? My childhood was not safe at all. I was always afraid that the next explosion was going to happen. It ruined relationships with people. I wasn't a good partner because I didn't know how to love the way that they should be loved. It's affected me through school. It's essentially it's been a massive problem in my life in ways that my parents would never have expected. And I think that if you're someone that is struggling with this and you think it's just affecting you, I just really want you to know that it's not just affecting you. It's affecting everyone around you.
Steve, the first thing I want to say is thank you so much. You flew out halfway across the country to be on this podcast. You shared some of the most intimate details that someone can, and you chose to do it on camera for the benefit of our community, the military and veteran community. That's incredible. Okay, your vulnerability is recognized and appreciated, and I truly do believe that it's going to be impactful, even life-changing for people that choose to watch this. Thank you.
No, I hope so, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's been a really great time.
Yeah,
talking to you.
you're super easy to talk to, great communicator, and we could not have had a better guest for the podcast today. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you to those of you who have chosen to watch the Check Your Six Pack podcast. We really appreciate you being here. And if you believe that this story or any of these stories could be impactful for somebody else, please let them know about this. Send this to somebody, pass it on, shoot a link, an email, whatever. But get the word out on this, because these are stories that are far too common, but they're not talked about enough. And that's what we're trying to do. We want to change some lives with this. For me and everybody else at the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress and Uniformed Services University, we really appreciate you being here and watching, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for joining us behind the beakers. I'm Dr. Sarah Maggio.
And I'm Kelly Huber.
In this episode, Steve shares a very emotional story of how the heavy drinking and substance use by his parents greatly impacted his life.
Many of us have heard the phrase, "It runs in my family" when it comes to heavy alcohol use, but heritability of alcohol use disorder is actually estimated to be between 36 and 50%.
So why do only a minority of people with parents that have an alcohol use disorder go on to develop AUD themselves?
There's actually a combination of factors that contribute to this, including biological, psychological, social, and environmental.
Let's zoom the microscope in on the bio piece with some genetics for alcohol metabolism.
2 enzymes do the bulk of the work, alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH, and aldehyde dehydrogenase, ALDH. Variations in the genes that code for these enzymes can change the speed and efficiency of metabolizing alcohol.
ADH is up first to break down alcohol into a toxic substance called acetaldehyde. If this step runs too fast, acetaldehyde builds up quickly, making drinking unpleasant. You can have nausea, headaches, and even a flushed red face. This makes heavy drinking a lot less likely for people with this variation.
But with the slower version, which is actually more common, acetaldehyde builds up more slowly, making heavy drinking easier and actually tripling the risk for alcohol use disorder.
Next step is for ALDH to clear out the toxic acetaldehyde by metabolizing it into the much less toxic chemical acetate. Some gene variations slow down or nearly shut this off, causing some nasty effects like stronger hangovers and long-term tissue damage. While this may feel like a punishment for your body, it protects from alcohol use disorder risk.
On the flip side, faster ALDH variants make drinking feel more rewarding in the short term, but they're also linked to a higher risk of developing AUD.
Bottom line here, genetics can make alcohol more rewarding, more punishing, or more dangerous for your brain and your body.
Even though there is not one specific gene that directly and absolutely causes AUD, looking at genetics can help us understand and make predictions about the risk for developing AUD.
But don't rush to give Big Brother all of your DNA information. There are other ways to figure out if you are at higher risk.
There are psychological characteristics to consider, kind of like personality traits, but sciencey, that are more commonly associated with higher risk, and identifying those is way easier and cheaper than sequencing your entire genome.
Besides, the DoD has probably already done that for you.
Trying to define what an alcoholic personality looks like has been the focus of tons of scientific studies.
But all of them have failed to pinpoint a high-risk personality profile that fully explains the development of alcohol use disorder.
Science has been able to find several traits that are associated with the higher risk of developing an AUD.
I'm not a therapist, but I think we should unpack that some more.
When Austin says for the 1,000th time that he has an all-in personality, that is also called impulsivity or poor impulse control. Having an impulsive personality is associated with a higher risk for AUD.
People who develop AUD also tend to be high in the characteristic of negative emotionality, also sometimes called neuroticism, which is the tendency towards negative emotions like stress, anxiety, fear, or anger.
These personality factors influence the degree of stress relief or anxiety reduction that people get from drinking alcohol. This is also true for those who tend to be higher in the aggressive, impulsive, and extroverted characteristics.
And another big one that a lot of our military audience may relate to, sensation seeking or thrill seeking, high risk taking adrenaline junkies.
Sound familiar? Luckily for all you high risk takers out there, environmental and social factors also play a role.
Environment can range from the society that you live in to the barracks that you drink in. In fact, drinking alone can feel psychologically different than drinking the same amount with others.
We dig more into social and environmental factors in another episode, so we'll wrap up here with profound conclusions from Dr. Maggio.
Thank you, ma'am. Even though there are known risk factors associated with developing alcohol use disorder, there's no magic formula that guarantees someone's fate. By understanding what these risk factors are, you can strengthen your resilience and protect your health and mission readiness.
And remember, hangovers don't count as resilience training, no matter how many times you're puking during PT.
Hey, I want to tell you about Pushups for the Mind.mil. It's not just another mindfulness app. It's an evidence-based training program built for service members by neuroscientists working with the Department of War. This isn't about zoning out or relaxing. It's a structured training path starting with short daily sessions that build into a 4-week program. You'll learn how attention works and you'll train it, just like physical fitness. Each step builds mental strength, sharper focus, and better composure under stress. It's designed for the demands of military life, and it's free for anyone with a .mil address. Start your journey with Pushups for the Mind.mil and make your attention mission ready.